Randy Boyd's coming, so the extra accolades. Thank you, Wayne. Hey, thank you, Chancellor Davis, for welcoming us to your campus. Thank you all for being here. And most importantly, I want to say thank you to Governor Lee, who's come to present his message to East Tennessee directly to the people at the University of Tennessee, my alma mater, and I know a place that means a lot to everyone that's in this room. We're so thankful that he chose this location to do it. So last night I was in Nashville and got to hear the governor present his bold vision for the future of our state. And his program and his mission and his vision is going to do so much for so many people, enable an opportunity for people in our rural communities, for mental health, and especially for education and higher education. And as I'm always reminded of this phrase called the WIFM, that people are, you look around when people are hearing the speech and look for the WIFM. WIFM means, what's in it for me? So everybody's looking at, so what's in it for me? And I can tell you, everybody that was there for the University of Tennessee was incredibly excited to hear all the things that he outlined for the University of Tennessee. And I thought I would just share a few, and hopefully you'll share in my thanks and appreciation to our governor for all the great things he's going to do for our university. First, we have a budget that's unmatched, the highest budget we've ever had in our history, $643.8 million the governor has outlined in his budget for us. Includes an $81.5 million new building at the University of Tennessee's Institute for Agriculture, the Ellington Environmental Science Building. We also got $10 million for additional security throughout all of our campuses. The most important thing we do at our university is to make sure we provide a safe environment for our students to learn. And this $10 million will go a long ways to making sure that happens. He also put in his budget money to be able to provide residencies so that our health sciences center in Memphis can produce more family doctors to go and serve in our rural communities that so desperately need them. We are so excited and appreciative of that. And lastly, he also added $17.7 million in additional funds to be able to provide more support and salaries for our faculty and our staff, which so greatly deserve it. That and so many other things. We're so thankful for all the things that he's doing for our university. So I want to thank him for that, and also just say I'm so honored to be able to welcome my friend, a friend of the University of Tennessee, and the 50th governor of the great state of Tennessee, Governor Bill Lee. Thank you.
It's great to be here with you in Knoxville this evening for our first regional State of the State address. I don't know if you all had an opportunity to hear the one last night, but we decided that I want to get outside the bubble of the Capitol and of Nashville. Said that in the campaign, and so we decided to go into each of the three grand divisions and give the same vision, the same information, but do it uniquely to each community so that folks in this part of the state can hear it as well. So tonight is special, and I'm proud to be here with you. I also want to let you know that I am keeping an eye on the clock. Last night's speech was long. Tonight's will not be so long because I know there are a whole lot of people in this room who are very interested in a ball game that's about to happen. And I'll make sure that you get out of here in time to get there. So thank you, President Boyd, Chancellor Davis, for the opportunity to be here tonight. It's an honor to share my vision with you all for our state. And it's fitting that we are at an institution for higher education, because I'm going to lay out the 4 key areas that I think are critical and important for our state, and certainly education is one of those areas. If we're going to lead the nation, and I think we can, education is a key component of that. The year that my oldest daughter turned 16, she and I decided to do a father-daughter trip. We had been through some personal tragic experiences in our life and difficulties, and so we decided to do a trip that would be overcoming. So we traveled out to Grand Teton National Park in Wyoming to climb one of the largest mountains in the United States. It's a difficult climb, it's a technical climb, so we spent months preparing both physically and mentally for the climb. And the apex of the trip would take us to 14,000 feet But on our first day, we were to climb to 11,000 feet and spend the night there to prepare for the climb. So as we neared the base camp at 11,000 feet, our guide, who was probably sensing my nervousness, he pulled me aside and he said something that was very important. He said, "You need to make a decision that you are going to make this climb before you get up to the base camp. Because when you get there, you're going to look up at the Grand Teton and it's going to look like a massive granite spire before you, straight up higher than anything you've ever seen, and you'll be very intimidated. And if you have the tiniest doubt on the way up there, when you're hiking, then once you stand at the base camp tonight and look up, you're going to be convinced that you can't possibly climb that thing." So he said, "You need to decide right then and there if you're going to finish this climb." And I did decide, and we did finish. And let me tell you, like everything that's difficult, the view from the top was worth the effort. And as a state, our challenges too are very difficult, and the climb will require great effort. But Tennessee is a remarkable place with remarkable people. I think we can all agree that while important things happen in the Capitol and inside the halls of government, it's actually what happens outside that makes Tennessee truly great. And nearly every Friday since Maria and I took office, Maria and I have left the Capitol. We've gone out into our communities to meet with Tennesseans and learn more about what it is that makes our state work. And we met a soybean farmer in Lauderdale County who navigates floodwaters of the Mississippi to bring in a harvest and carry on our agricultural tradition. And we met with a third grade school teacher in North Nashville who works overtime to make sure that her students are reading at grade level and to make sure that they continue to be some of the fastest improving students in the country. And we met a small business owner in Jamestown who employs some of his neighbors and keeps the backbone of the Tennessee economy running strong through small business. And so as a lifelong Tennessean, we've traveled this state, and when I reflect upon our state and I see our people, I'm filled with pride. And I'm proud to report to you, after seeing with my own eyes, that our state, the state of our state, it is hopeful, and it's prosperous, and it's strong. God has truly blessed us. Our economy is growing, our schools are improving, our natural resources are abundant, and they're beautiful, and indeed we are the envy of many states. But while our prosperity should be celebrated, it shouldn't be taken for granted, for it was not granted to us. Our prosperity has been hard won. From the settlers of the 1790s to the leaders of the past and the present, many have contributed to the successes that we now enjoy. Indeed, this is a remarkable state with remarkable people, but past success shouldn't be taken for granted, and future success should not be assumed. We can be glad for the things that we've done that have brought us to this point, but we must also recognize that new accomplishments will be required from the leaders of today if we're to reach our full potential tomorrow. And maybe the key question before us is whether we will stand at this spot that we're in and enjoy the view from this far up the mountain, or whether we will push ahead to new heights and new prosperity. And I would encourage all of us that we press higher. A stronger education force, a stronger education system, a better prepared workforce, a system of justice that lives up to its name, and safer neighborhoods all across Tennessee. These and more goals are within our reach if we will unite behind a common vision. So in addition to delivering the State of the State address, I'm also called upon to present a budget, a state budget. By God's favor, our state is in a strong financial position, and I believe that my proposed budget reflects just that. You know, managing a budget is one of the most important things that government can do, and presenting a fiscally responsible budget is one of the most important things that I do as a governor. As a conservative businessman, I know that a good budget needs to pay for what it is that we need, but we need to do so with no debt, and my budget takes on zero long-term debt. Perhaps most importantly, it saves for a rainy day. As our state continues to grow, we are committed to remaining one of the most fiscally sound and best managed states in America. But we live in prosperous days, and it's precisely during these times when we must build up our storehouses when times may not be so good. For that reason, I'm particularly proud of this. In my budget, we are making the largest single contribution to the rainy day fund in Tennessee's history. When this budget is implemented, our rainy day fund will be at $1.1 billion, the largest amount in history and the largest amount relative, as a percentage relative to revenue that's ever existed in the state of Tennessee. Now, I have said many times that Tennessee can lead the nation, and this budget will help us do that. And in particular, there are 4 things in my budget and in my legislative agenda that I think we must do if that goal to lead the nation is to become a reality. First, Tennessee must deliver a world-class education, and that education must be aligned with the needs of job creators today and the ones in the future. To accomplish that, our students need more guidance, our teachers and our principals need more support, and our parents need more choices. I've often spoken about the 4 out of 10 kids who will not attend college in this state. And for them, we must vastly strengthen our vocational and our technical and our agricultural educational offerings to make sure that they're career ready. After 35 years in the private sector, I know that the job market can change quickly. And education must stay in sync with industry. When companies like Google and Apple and IBM no longer require a 4-year degree for some of their highly skilled jobs, we know that we need to think differently about how we approach preparing our kids for success. Elementary and middle schools need to begin skills training earlier. And from top to bottom, high school needs to look a lot different. And in that spirit, I'm proposing the governor's investment in vocational education, the GIVE Act. The GIVE Act is a $25 million investment to increase the number of young people earning an industry certification and entering a career within 1 year of high school. Another one of our goals is to put Tennessee in the top half of states in the technology sector for job creation by 2022. To that end, I announced the Future Workforce Initiative. It's a $4 million effort to increase science, technology, engineering, and math training, STEM training, in K-12 schools. The Future Workforce Initiative will add 100 new CTE programs. It'll grow the number of teachers qualified to teach work-based learning and computer science courses, and it'll expand access to AP courses and early post-secondary options for high schoolers. Technology and STEM are particularly important here in East Tennessee because right down the road, we have a truly world-class facility at Oak Ridge. And the Tennessee Valley Corridor today is accomplishing much in leveraging these assets at UT and Oak Ridge and the TVA for private sector job development. But we can do more, and we plan on working with President Boyd and others in the area to build on these successes. Many students will go to college, and for that group, we want to provide world-class higher education options across our state. President Boyd talked about our investment in the University of Tennessee. We must continue to invest in our outcomes-focused approach to funding higher education, which is why we've set aside $34 million new dollars in this budget to fully fund our higher education institutions. We are making CTE a major priority, but we also want to do other things well in education. I fundamentally believe that every child ought to have access to a great traditional public school. And so even as we consider expanding options in this state, we have to redouble our efforts to make sure that public schools in Tennessee are well-resourced and that Tennessee's teachers and principals are the best and most celebrated in the business. I've often said that education is about more than a test score. But test scores can provide valuable information and valuable data to both teachers and students when used properly. Later this month, tens of thousands of students will be completing their end-of-course testing to help ensure that they're receiving the quality of education that they deserve. And there's been a lot of frustration around the administration of the state test in recent years, and I share that frustration. But I'll tell you, my Commissioner of Education is working tirelessly to prepare for this year's test, to minimize the challenges that we have, but more importantly, she is working to prioritize the procurement process for selecting a new test vendor for next year and beyond. While the execution must get better, we have to remain committed to the notion that you can't improve what you don't measure. Going forward, our focus will be on executing a testing regimen that is trustworthy, that is helpful, and that is on time. Whatever else happens in the classroom, the safety of our children and our teachers is paramount for my administration and for all of our elected officials. And for that reason, I'm proposing an additional $30 million investment in our school safety fund to prioritize the districts with schools that currently do not have resource officers on duty. Together, we can make sure that every school in Tennessee is a safer place for our children. In my inaugural address, I said that Tennesseans would have to be bold and have to be courageous and have to be strong in the face of today's biggest challenges. And one of those challenges is closing the gap between the quality of education offered to students regardless of their zip code. Tennessee has led the nation with important K-12 reforms over the last decade, and we've seen the payoff. Our student outcomes have been among the fastest improving in the nation. But sustained improvement requires constant innovation, and we must keep looking for the next game changer. Parents need more choices with respect to the education of their children, and those options should be well-funded and highly accountable. I believe that highly accountable public charter schools are a great model for expanding choice without sacrificing quality. And I have seen firsthand how they can dramatically impact the life and trajectory of a child. In my budget, we're doubling the amount of public charter school facility funding. And I'll support legislation this year that makes it easier to open good charter schools and easier to close bad ones. But we should do even more. Nearly 1 in 3 students born into poverty does not finish high school. And when a kid doesn't finish high school, they are much more likely to stay in poverty. Low-income students in this state deserve the same opportunities as other kids. And we need a bold plan that will help level the playing field. We need to challenge the status quo and increase competition and not slow down until every student in Tennessee has access to a great education. We are not going to get big results in our struggling schools by nibbling around the edges. And that's why we need education savings accounts in Tennessee this year. ESAs will enable low-income students from the most underperforming school districts to attend an independent school of their choice at no cost to their family. Now, I know there's concern about programs like this, and the concern is that it will take money away from public schools. But my ESA plan will invest at least $25 million new dollars into public schools in the first year to fill in the gap when a student transfers to another school. My ESA plan will, in fact, strengthen public schools and provide more choice to parents at the same time. Creating competition will provide a new incentive for schools to improve and provide new opportunities for thousands of students who otherwise have not had access to a high-quality education. I will work hard to make sure that this is the year that every student in Tennessee has a chance at a great education, no matter what zip code they live in, no matter what economic status they hold. Another important issue in education is curriculum. During the past 2 years of traveling on the campaign trail, an issue that I was constantly asked about was character education and civics education. At face value, this might seem like a small issue, but in the last year, it was reported that young people between the ages of 18 and 29 in this country have a more favorable view of socialism than of capitalism. And last week, I read about a recent study that said in 49 of our 50 states, a majority of residents would fail a U.S. citizenship test. Now, I can't help but believe that those two statistics are connected. President Reagan said that freedom is never more than one generation away from extinction. And this demands answering an obvious question. How will our children know of our cherished American values if we don't teach them? We all desire a more perfect union, but we cannot expect future generations to build upon the incredible progress that our country has made if we fail to teach them the history and values that made it possible. So let me say this. Whatever may be going on in other states or in our nation's capital, in this state, our children will be taught civics education, character formation, and unapologetic American exceptionalism. We are beginning that effort by creating the Governor's Civics Instructional Seal, which will recognize schools that excel at teaching civics curriculum. I said there were 4 things that we must do if we want to lead the nation. First is build a better education system. Second, we must build a criminal justice system that's tough and that's smart and that is, above all, just. For decades, this country's been too willing to fight crime on the surface alone, lock them up and throw away the key. Now, in more ways than one, we're paying the price for that. Tennessee is currently incarcerating more people for a longer period of time than ever before. And the population of our county jails is growing daily. Incarceration has a generational impact too. Children with incarcerated parents are more likely to be incarcerated themselves. And besides the human cost, there's the actual cost. Incarcerating an adult in the state of Tennessee costs $28,000 a year. And incarcerating a juvenile can cost many more times than that. And for all the trouble and the cost, what are we getting in our criminal justice outcomes? High recidivism, higher violent crime, jails that are filled, taxpayer money, out of control spending to build jails and to incarcerate more people. Now, let me be clear. Punishment for violent criminals and for drug traffickers who prey on our citizens, to them and for them, justice should be swift and it should be severe. But we also must be better at preparing those who are going to re-enter society in order that they will not re-enter prison. It's past time that our elected leaders speak with one voice on this very important subject. Because when it comes to reforming our state's justice system, the cost of doing nothing is not zero. Crime victims pay the price. Families pay the price. Taxpayers pay the price. So in my proposal to the legislature this year, I'm recommending a series of smart reforms that will make a big difference. One area of reform is the use of community supervision for low-risk offenders. Community supervision allows us to provide the corrections oversight necessary to hold someone accountable for their crime without incurring the 20 times the cost that it takes to incarcerate them. And of those that are incarcerated, 95% of them are not serving a life sentence. and will eventually come out. And we need to be sure that they are prepared for that. Why? Because every successful reentry means one less crime and one less victim. My commitment to having fewer crime victims in this state is reflected in a proposed expansion of education and reentry counseling opportunities for our prisons. Educational attainment for incarcerated people can reduce their recidivism by up to 43%. Less crime, less victims, less cost. Another important part of successful reentry is stable employment. And for that reason, we've introduced a bill eliminating the expungement fees for those that are already eligible under the law to alleviate the cost burden of getting back on their feet. We must also take bold steps to stop the scourge of drugs that are illegally trafficked into our state. I pledged to make Tennessee a state that drug traffickers fear. And I will make sure that our prosecutors and our law enforcement have the tools they need to make that a reality. We're increasing the penalties on dangerous drugs like fentanyl and making it clear that we'll have no leniency on high-level drug dealers who target the residents of Tennessee. And we need more than just strong laws to keep our communities safe. We also need strong law enforcement. It's no secret that Tennessee lags other states on law enforcement and corrections pay, which impacts our hiring and our retention rates. We're increasing investments in correctional officer pay and training opportunities. And my budget calls for new investment in our law enforcement capacity. I know that we can do things differently in this area because I've been involved with groups who have made a difference. Nonprofits like Men of Valor in Nashville are helping those who enter prison be better prepared to re-enter society. The recidivism rate of Men of Valor's program graduates is less than 1/3 the state's average. My administration will do more than talk about how important these issues are. We intend to be national innovators and leaders in showing how people throughout the state, the volunteer state, are willing to partner together to serve one another. Last night, I was proud to announce that we're launching the Volunteer Mentorship Initiative to equip Tennesseans throughout our state to mentor fellow Tennesseans who are currently in prison. And I signed up last night as the first volunteer. This initiative will begin by working with Tennessee-based nonprofits to pair degree-seeking inmates with mentors on the outside as they seek better opportunities for themselves during their time in prison and their first days back in the community. And tonight, I'm asking every Tennessean who desires to prayerfully consider volunteering in this effort. As our state has shown before, and we in the volunteer state know like no other, we can change the course of history and the destiny of people when we step up, volunteer, and serve one another. The challenge ahead of us is great, but the urgency of the situation is greater. And I know that we will rise to meet this challenge. For this issue, the admonition to us is clear. Do justice, love mercy, and walk humbly. First, education. Second, justice. And third, every Tennessean should have access to high-quality health care that they can afford. This is an ambitious goal that no state has accomplished, and Tennessee will not accomplish it overnight. We will work with patients and providers and payers to establish Tennessee as a world-class healthcare market for our people, using transparency and competition. To begin this process, I've asked our Finance Administration Commissioner, Stuart McWhorter, to chair a healthcare modernization task force that will work closely with private sector stakeholders and policymakers and communities across the state to develop a list of reforms and critical investments. In the short term, there are several things we can do to move Tennessee forward to having better health outcomes. We'll continue to work with the General Assembly and with Washington to look for waiver opportunities that help us increase insurance coverage without big government strings attached. We'll also be exploring ways to build off of the important efforts of the Trump administration to promote price transparency in healthcare. Another way to lower healthcare cost is to combat Medicaid fraud. Together, all of these efforts will place downward pressure on the cost of coverage. And I'm also committed to working with our rural communities to ensure that they have the quality health care that meets their current and their future needs. Despite the closure of rural hospitals across the state and country, many opportunities exist to transform care in these communities through smart reforms, increased innovation, and a new business model. Addressing these challenges requires a long-term approach, and we've already taken steps that will deliver real progress even this year. For one, I'm proposing $20 million to boost broadband accessibility, particularly to rural communities, which will make technology like telemedicine more accessible and more practical. And too often the conversation around healthcare focuses just on physical health. But physical well-being is very important, but a national conversation around mental and behavioral health has to be done. It's long overdue. Nearly 300,000 Tennesseans are facing serious mental health challenges, and many of them are falling through the cracks. I made a vow on the campaign trail to strengthen the mental safety health net, and I intend to do just that. To truly be champions of mental and behavioral health, we must put everything we have behind defeating the opioid crisis in Tennessee once and for all. In East Tennessee, this issue is particularly acute. And we must continue to make progress in preventing addiction, and I will defend the smart limits on prescriptions passed by the legislature last year. And in this budget, we'll also work to address the other victims of addiction, and that is the dependent children of those that are addicted. We recommend expanding our investment in the Safe Baby Courts initiative to support vulnerable infants, and we're investing $5 million in new funding to address a rising caseload in our Department of Children's Services. Also, as we begin to see an increase in the rise of students entering kindergarten that are facing challenges from prenatal drug exposure, I'm recommending that we invest an additional $6 million into our early intervention services for schools. These investments will make Tennessee a healthier state. And when we're healthier, it's good for Tennesseans, but it's also good for the bottom line. Fourth, and finally, when we've accomplished these and many other goals, what remains expected of us is that government be operated with integrity, with effectiveness, and with as little cost as possible. Fundamentally, government exists to protect our liberties, not to grant favors or build kingdoms or needlessly interfere with the lives of our citizens. I have long believed that Tennessee's most precious natural resource is its people. Many of our people can be found at nonprofits in this state who are doing with excellence jobs that cannot and should not be done by the government. So to help protect taxpayer dollars and engage some of our underutilized citizens, one announcement I'm particularly excited to make is the Governor's Office of Faith-Based and Community Initiatives. This office will leverage the nonprofit community and help us unleash the potential of all Tennesseans to get involved, not only to make lives better for their fellow citizens, but to reduce the responsibilities and ultimately the size of government. As my daughter and I neared the end of our climb up the Grand Teton, we came to a famous place on the climb that was known for its very narrow ledge. To make it worse, there's a section in that ledge that has 1,000-foot exposure, which is climber terminology for a 1,000-foot fall if you make a bad step. The point is, the only way to get across it was to set your face forward against the mountain and to step sideways across the gap and to not look back, and whatever you do, don't look down. As a state, I think we find ourselves in a very strong position, and we have a very nice view right where we are. We can choose to stay here and enjoy it, or we can choose to step across the ledge. and move to higher ground. But if we decide to go to higher ground and to go further, then we must resolve not to look back and not to look down. If we lead Tennessee well, Tennessee may well lead the nation. And my prayer is that we will all work together to do just that. May God bless you, and may God bless the great state of Tennessee.